Welcome to the living room where we listen, learn, and live together. I'm your host, Richard Martin. Make yourself right at home. I'm glad you're here. I don't know about you, my friends, but I am grateful that winter is rapidly becoming a thing of the past and spring is within arm's reach. In fact, I believe we have officially crossed the threshold from winter into spring. Now, depending on where you're living and where you're listening to this, the temperatures might not betray that, but I'm grateful even when the calendar says, hey, spring is here. And I'm looking forward to the blossoming and blooming of beautiful flowers. In fact, my wife and I will probably make it a point to travel up to the DC area to see the cherry blossoms in bloom. So congratulations, you've made it through winter, at least the worst part of winter. I know in certain locations here in the States and elsewhere in the world, a few more snow showers and wintry nights are ahead of us, or cold nights, but spring is coming. And with it, it will lead right into summer, which is my favorite season of the year, this spring, summer dance, as it were. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm a Florida boy at heart. So whereas I've learned over the years to endure the winter, I don't necessarily embrace it, but I embrace with glee and joy spring and summer. What about you? What's your favorite season of the year and why? Do me a favor, drop that in the comments. Let me know what your favorite season is and why. I appreciate you hanging out with me here in the living room over the past several months. This has truly been a joyful enterprise for me, having had the wonderful opportunity to talk with friends and to meet persons who are now new friends. And if you haven't caught up with the episodes, please take your time doing so. I appreciate you being willing to provide feedback and provide support in ways that we can grow and get better. So for your listenership and for subscribing and sharing the content, hey, 2 thumbs up, way up to you. I appreciate you. And we're looking forward to future conversations going forward. I also am getting kind of used to this solo podcast format where I get a chance to muse a little bit out loud with you. And so I'm grateful for this second time being able to do so. Last season, all of our episodes were conversations with special guests. This season, as you have seen, most of our conversations have been with special guests, but this is the second time I am in the hot seat, as it were. And who knows, we'll probably have to expand here soon and develop our team so that maybe someone can actually pose questions to me. Are you interested in being that person? Let me know. But I'm interested in sharing some things today. I want to talk about the value of friendship and the power of perspective. So friendship, when you think of it, what comes to your mind? Well, for me, several things come to my mind, several pictures, images, several people, of course. But there's also a song that comes to mind. It's from the 90s hit Pixar movie, Toy Story. You remember Toy Story with Woody and Buzz Lightyear and all of Andy's toys, and the theme song that has stood the test of time, sung by Randy Newman. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. I love it. You've got problems. You've got troubles. I've got them too. There is nothing I wouldn't do for you. We'll stick together and we'll see it through. For you've got a friend in me. I wish I wrote the song. I'm going to be selfish in this moment. I wish I'd penned it or at least come up with the memorable and catchy melody. But it's so true, right? That life is fulfilling when you have at least one friend to live life with. And I know that when we were younger as children, it seems like friendship was developed organically. I mean, there might have been 1 or 2 friends that you had where it began with, do you want to be my friend? Or maybe they came to you and said, I am going to be your friend. And then throughout life, we have acquired friendships where we can't really locate the commencement or the beginning of that friendship. It wasn't like we signed a contract or came to some kind of agreement. It might have been circumstantial or situational, such that you and I were buddies in school. We were on the same dorm wing, or we sang in the choir together or hooped together. Or maybe we lived in the same neighborhood, or just by other circumstances, went to the same church. We became friends. And then what we've also seen is that there are seasons to friendships. We have childhood friends that still remain so. And then we have some childhood friends that we've lost contact with. There were some persons who tracked with us on a certain employment journey or business endeavor or traveling experience, but we really didn't keep up after those particular endeavors ended. And so I've been thinking about friendship lately, primarily because I'm studying the value of friendship and social support networks for my doctoral program. Now, I'm looking at it primarily in the context of pastoring, which is what I do. But by extension, I am finding myself thinking more and more of how necessary and fulfilling and vivifying or life-giving friendships are. So I will not name my friends because in naming them, I will get in trouble because I will forget to name someone. But what I found out is that if you can kind of think of concentric circles, that we tend to have friendships within all of these circles. On the outer perimeter of that concentric circle, of those concentric circles, would be persons that we might call friendly acquaintances. We know their names, they know our names. There are certain practices that keep us together, but those friendships might not have a level of depth and intimacy to them, such that as you move in and the circles become smaller all the way to your innermost circle, those friendships have a level of meaning and a quality to them, such that has been proven and tried by a way of experiences that we've had, hurts that we've experienced, conversations that we've been able to dive into. Maybe we've had to apologize to one another and receive or extend forgiveness to the other. Maybe we've tracked with the other person during some kind of family or life event that was, on one hand, very celebratory, getting married, having children, getting a degree, a new job, or something that was sorrowful and mournful, the death of a loved one, losing a job, other crises moments. And what I'm learning is that friends are great to help us navigate the seasons of life and the transitions of life. And so one of the reasons I believe that friendship is so valuable is because it provides accountability along the way. If you have not heard this before, allow me to be the first person to share it with you. No man, no woman, no person is an island. In other words, we are part of a connected ecosystem of humanity. And within that ecosystem, we have friends, which is kind of a sub level of relationship. Yes, we have our family members, blood related, and many of them can become friends. But we also have friends that are not bound together by physiology. We do not have the same historiobiography. We are friends as a result of, like I said before, various kinds of circumstances. And the beautiful thing about friendship is that friends often provide the accountability that we need from outside of us. There's definitely a level of accountability that is produced from within, a self-motivating, a self-intending, a self-inclining sense that comes from within. There's the kind of motivation, if you are a person of faith, there's the kind of motivation and energy that comes from God. And sometimes that comes through the agency of the accountability that friends provide. What I am doing right now, providing a solo form of podcast, is actually a result in large part of the accountability of one of my dear friends, one of my best friends, right? We were college roommates at one point. By God's grace, we've been able to maintain this friendship into adulthood, into a different iteration of familyhood. We are husbands now. And he has been tracking with the podcast, seeing the different interviews that I've been able to have and giving commentary and feedback. And very recently, when I did not have an interview lined up for a certain week, I said, well, I'm just going to wait till next week because I have an interview then. And he encouraged me, held me accountable. And he said, well, listen, I think that it would be more valuable and beneficial just to maintain consistency. Even if you have to offer words on your own, that'll also give you practice in learning to engage with your audience without bouncing back and forth between questions and comments of a special guest, although that's good. But maybe you should play with adding another lane to your podcast. So you have the interview and you'll have the monologue, as it were. Now, you might think as a pastor, teacher, preacher, it wouldn't be difficult to conceive of some possibilities there. But you know how the mind works, right? You just think, listen, I have this podcast and it is interview based. I don't want to introduce another kind of segment when I don't necessarily have that coming from my audience. But then I had to think about it. He is my audience. He represents a significant portion of our community here in the living room who would find value in being able to just track with me as I share. I cite that example to say if it wasn't for his accountability, then not only would we have a blip in our living room schedule, but I would not now be on number 2 of trying this monologue approach. And I'm growing comfortable with it. I'm actually now becoming kind of like a magnet, thinking of themes. And when something's on my mind, I'm saying, man, I could talk to my people about this. So I appreciate you, my boy. You know who you are. Thank you for the accountability. Would you be able to say the same about your experience? Have you experienced the accountability that friends have brought to your life? Accountability is not always easy to accept, but I found in my own personal experience that whether it was very easy to embrace along the lines of an affirming word and a supportive word, or when it was also challenging, when my friends had to kind of allow me to get a good whiff of my own stuff and let me know, hey, listen, straighten up and fly right, or let's think about it this way. I've benefited from both of those ends and in between. And so I want you to practice appreciating the accountability that your friends provide, not just receiving it, but also practicing it as well. Because the second thing I'm learning about friendship is that as it is sustained, it requires more and more of a mutual investment. You've heard friends who have bemoaned the fact that they feel like certain friendships are one-dimensional, or I am only a friend to you so far as I am benefiting you. But the older we become, the more we realize that friendships that are sustainable have to be mutually informing. In other words, both parties have to be willing to sacrifice. Both parties have to be willing to invest time. And this doesn't always have to be on some scheduling tip. It can be organic, but it needs to be mutual. And so I'm learning not only to receive my friends and thank them for their affirmation of me, but I also want to be intentional about seeking their development and their growth. How can I be in your corner? If you've asked me to hold you accountable, I don't want to fail you in that way. I also want to be the kind of friend that knows how to pour into as opposed to just receiving. There's a biblical passage in Proverbs, that great book of wisdom in the Old Testament of the Bible, Proverbs 18:24. And it speaks about two sides of the friendship coin. It says, man, listen, if your friends are failing you, your life will quickly come to a ruin. But there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother, or that sticks closer than a sibling, or that sticks closer than someone with whom you are related as family. In other words, there is the potential in our friendships to have a level of depth and integrity and purity such that there's a closeness there in which I can be vulnerable and transparent. We can walk through the various seasons and transitions of life. Hey, listen, you and I have a given understanding. Remember now, the concentric circle says that we can filter friendship based on how we are related to certain people. And as we get closer to that inner circle, man, it's just no questions need to be asked. There is virtually nothing that is within the bounds of ethics and legality that as Randy Newman said in the Toy Story song, there is nothing I wouldn't do for you. We'll stick together and we'll see it through because you have a friend in me. So I'm learning to become a better friend, even as I reflect on the quality of friendship I've been blessed to have. I can think back to my elementary years in school, throughout middle school, high school, college, graduate school, and into my professional life. I'm grateful that in each of those seasons, I've been able to pinpoint at least one friend, and more than one, but at least one friend that has been of significant value. And many of them, by God's grace, we've been able to transition through the seasons. And I want to encourage you again, take inventory of your friendships. What kind of quality of friendships do you have? What do you bring to the friendships? Are you bringing gossip and corruption and division? Are you pitting friends against one another? Are you just a friend in title, but not in substance? And what about those that call themselves your friends? How are they adding value and accountability and support to you? Do you all share objectives and long-term goals? Maybe not necessarily because you're in the same profession, but just when it comes to the quality of character that we're seeking to develop is often seen in the company that we keep. So I want us to think about that, because friendships not only are influential, but they can be very valuable, a very valuable asset and support for us, both in the short term and in the long term. As kind of a bonus, I will say this before we transition. I've also found that friendships are dynamic in nature, in that they are static and they have the potential to take up expressions that are not necessarily reflective of the original context that they were born in. So whereas I might have become friends with someone in college, we're not in college anymore. We don't live in the same place anymore. And so how this friendship is maintained might look different. So this past year of pandemic, I think has forced us to really think creatively and to be more intentional about how certain friendships are supported. And so there have been times where I've had to catch myself when in conversation with friends, either A, if I feel like, man, I am really over talking and I've not done any listening, or if I'm distracted and I'm not listening attentively, to turn the timer off, that internal clock. You know how sometimes you'll have something to do, and just sit and share in the moment. Because in the absence of being able to just get into one another's presence, travel together, man, talking on the phone, FaceTiming, text messaging becomes all the more valuable as a source of communal support. And so friendship is valuable. In fact, I came across a quote not long ago from the late great, the greatest of the squared circle, the man himself, Muhammad Ali. He wrote a poem on friendship. You can check it out. You can actually hear him on YouTube. If you just go on YouTube and type in Muhammad Ali on friendship, you'll hear it. But I wanted you to see it and read it and hear it. He says, friendship is a priceless gift that cannot be bought nor sold, but its value is far greater than a mountain made of gold. For gold is cold and lifeless. It can neither see nor hear. In times of trouble, it's powerless to cheer. It has no ears to listen, no heart to understand. It cannot bring you comfort or reach out a helping hand. So when you ask God for a gift, be thankful if he sends not diamonds, pearls, or riches, but the love of real, true friends. That's from the greatest to ever do it, Muhammad Ali, on friendship. So what do you think about that? Do friendships really have greater value than diamonds, rings, and gold and other material things? I think they do. And I think they are worthwhile in terms of our investment. As recently as earlier today, at the time of this recording, I was connected with two of my brothers, and they were hearing me kind of articulate some of the challenges I've been having in this doctoral program. And they were able to provide questions that gave me perspective. Questions that gave me perspective. I had been looking through the window, as it were, at a certain side of this program, and they opened up other windows and invited me, metaphorically speaking, to look through these windows by way of questions. They asked me, well, what are you enjoying about right now? I know what is annoying about right now, but what are you enjoying? The other person said, well, let's look back. How has the journey up until this point been? Have you enjoyed or benefited from? Can you pinpoint and cite positives from the journey? And those two windows provided a fresh opportunity to enhance and expand my perspective. I want to talk to you now about the power of perspective. Yes, friendship is valuable, not just because of the accountability that it can bring and the affirmation that it can yield, but also because it provides opportunity for enhanced and expanded perspective, to look at things differently, to learn to listen and adopt the posture of another person's experience and grow from it. And I've been reading this book recently from one of my former members that I had the chance to pastor briefly. He was in the late stages, late seasons, sunset years of his life when my wife and I were first married and I first began pastoring in the Maryland, D.C. area. And I would come to know by way of my pastoral colleagues, other members, his family, no less, just what an indelible impression he had made and still does make on the medical community, especially in the obstetrics and gynecological community. His name is Dr. Lennox Westney Sr., Dr. Lennox Westney Sr., and I have his autobiography called Just As I Am, Challenged but Confident. I want you to check out his autobiography. Google Dr. Lennox Westney Sr. I'm sure you'll find no shortage of inspirational and positive content concerning his life, his work, and his legacy. In one of the chapters of his autobiography, where he details in summary fashion some of his personal medical challenges. This is the doctor now assessing his own medical experiences and talking about certain medical challenges that he faced and was able to overcome and endure really throughout his life, not just in the late stages of his life, although there were definitely some things that were located then, but even in his collegiate experience, before marriage, before becoming a father, he battled with some things. After highlighting those particular medical challenges, he goes into this section where he talks about how he coped with, and benefited from his illnesses. Now that subheading alone, coping with and benefiting from illnesses. And he itemizes certain lessons that he had gained as he paused and reflected on his life as far as his own medical history. Now, the reason I felt this so important is because I've often heard that there's power in perspective, but I have been challenged here lately to really seek to develop a better perspective in certain aspects and segments of my life, even as I just look out on the global horizon. I mean, we are 1 year plus into a pandemic that has, I believe, forever altered the way we live life. Will things come back to resembling some sense of normalcy? In certain areas, they already have, and I think in some other areas they will. But in a great way, I think we are having to learn to expand and enhance our perspective. How can we look at things differently and not just one way? How can we walk around the vehicle of life as opposed to just looking at it head on? And so this was his approach. He said, listen, I can't always help the fact that illness comes and challenges take place, but I do want to share with you the lessons that I've learned. And here's one or two of the lessons that he shared. I'll read them for context, and then maybe we can have a discussion about them. He says, I have learned to be just as grateful for the negatives as well as the positives in my life. Somehow, they enable me to develop strength of character and greater ability to cope with other challenging issues of life. Isn't that powerful? Somehow, they enable me to develop strength of character. That's a change in perspective. I've learned to appreciate both the positives and the negatives because taken together, they can enable me to develop strength of character. He says, I have learned to be more sensitive toward and more appreciative of the simple things in life. Among these are the sunshine, the fresh air, the water flowing over the rocks, the green of spring, the changing colors of fall, the sound of music and laughter, and the energy that exudes from my grandchildren. I'll skip the next two and come to this one, number 5. He says, I have learned again that optimism is more therapeutic than doubtfulness and pessimism. Optimism is motivating, elevating, and healing. Pessimism is stressful, depressing, and debilitating. Hence, I have learned to nurture a positive outlook on my medical condition. And there are several other lessons that he shares. Those 3 really grabbed and gripped me as I was reading through this section of Dr. Westney's autobiography. That idea of being able to have and adopt a changed perspective that sees through the negative and the positive experiences of life, the opportunity to develop not only an optimistic outlook on life, but to become more sensitive to what he calls the simple things of life as well as to have the opportunity to develop strength of character. So why do I spend time talking about the power of perspective here? Well, as I listen to the words of Dr. Westney, again, it provides a window into this maturation process called adulthood. That adulting is not just acquiring finances to be able to acquire things. And I know you already know that. Sure, like the best of us, like my fellow adult, I'm enjoying that aspect of adulthood, but I'm learning that that is not adulting and living really at its essence. Rather, it is when I recognize and admit I'm not able to control most of life, definitely not all of life. Can I make plans? Can I abide by a schedule? Can I seek to be intentional? Yes, but man, they're just things that happen. I'm not saying it in an insensitive way. Hey, I'm saying it experientially. It can be befuddling, to say the least, as we navigate this thing called life. But we have the opportunity to adopt and grow the ability to have different perspective options. So I can at one and the same time have a perspective that this is really challenging and have a perspective that says I'm going to learn from, in, and through the challenge. So as he lists the different illnesses and medical conditions that he battled, as I was reading about them and imagining, man, if I were gripped by even one of them, no less all of them, would I really be able to lean in and glean the lessons that he presented? Well, I don't have to just imagine if I were him. I can think of things that I'm in right now. And I think you can as well. And whatever we're in, wherever we're walking, we have the opportunity to say, am I just looking at this through one window, through one set of lenses? And is there an opportunity to kind of see the same scenario, the same situation, as opportunity to learn lessons that provide strength of character? See, one of the things that I am growing to understand and appreciate more and more is that at the end of the day, we lead lives from our character condition. It is the quality of our characters that ultimately informs what we do in life, how our relationships are maintained, who we come to our relationships as is our character. It is not simply our reputation, but it is our character. And I think character is honed and purified and strengthened really by adopting the ability to have different perspectives about the lives that we live. I just want to stress again that I don't want to be heard as saying something that I'm not intending to say. I'm not intending to say that we ought to go pursuing challenges in life. There's enough challenge and suffering and difficulty and testing and trial that comes without us looking for it. So I'm not saying go manufacture something just so that you can develop character. What I am saying is it seems to be a thing of life, a fact of life, that we will have experiential realities that we couldn't account for, we didn't solicit, we in many ways could not forecast or predict. And even when they are such that we could, see certain things coming, or a loved one was ill, or we had a hint that there was going to be a downsizing on the job or some other kind of financial crisis, even then we can still learn to say, can I have a widened perspective? As a person of faith, I believe that this can become language of our prayers. Lord, give me a renewed perspective, an expanded perspective. Allow me to see things in a different way, not just this one way, because it might lead me down towards depression, anxiety. It might cause for me to see life in a pessimistic way. But also, Lord, help me as I'm having a renewed perspective to also grow to appreciate the simple things in life. He mentioned some of them: sunshine and birds chirping and simple walks with family, playing with your nieces or your nephews or your grandchildren or your children. Perspective allows us to be able to keep a better pace on life. Not long ago, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who, as I speak, is mourning the loss of a sibling. And he was sharing with me quite transparently that he notices that there are still things that trigger him. whether it's a certain location in the city or a certain kind of car, he is still triggered by that. And he is trying to, at one and the same time, feel his feelings, but also adopt a certain perspective that will enable him to move forward. Now, when it comes to this idea of developing perspective, there are a couple of practical principles that I have found to be beneficial. The first is you can't always rush perspective. How you see something right now as default and inherent as it may seem, believe it or not, it has been in development for a while. So it is when you're trying to develop new perspective, it takes time to see the glass, proverbially speaking, as half full if you've had practice seeing it as half empty. It takes time to appreciate the rays of light that shine in through dark moments if you know by experience either more dark moments than light moments, or that's what you have focused on. So I want you to be patient with yourself as you are living life. This is what we do in the living room. We're seeking to live together. And so as we're seeking to live life, not only harnessing the value of friendship, but benefiting from the power of perspective, be patient with yourself. It will take time. But the second thing is this: as you're being patient, be persistent, be dedicated to the cause of increasing and honing this power of perspective. How you look at something really can make the difference of how you grow through what it is that you're experiencing right now. And I believe you can come out on the other end, not only with renewed tools in terms of how you see things, but your quality of character would be refined and strengthened, allowing you to live into life in all that you do, with whom you do life, as the best version of yourself. What do you think about that? Can I get an amen? So I just wanted to share those two thoughts with you today, my friends, on the value of friendship and the power of perspective. Lean into your friendships. Let them know that you appreciate them and receive their appreciation for you, and continue to practice developing the power of perspective. And I think we'll be all right. Would you do me a favor? If you've not done so already, I kindly ask that you would subscribe to the channel. If you are interested in more deep dive, long form musings, let me know in the comments if there are certain topics, subjects that you want to explore together. I'd love to hear your feedback. I would love for these messages and conversations to reach as many people as possible who find value in listening and learning so that they might live. That's all we have for this episode of The Living Room. I'm your host, Richard Martin. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time, continue to listen, continue to learn, and continue to live.